My wife brought her boyfriend home to announce her pregnancy, a web of lies, gun threats, and betrayal that shattered our family forever, unaware that I was filming everything. Sarah, 45, and I, 47, have been married for 22 years. We were married shortly after graduating from college, having met through mutual acquaintances. My first and only committed relationship was with Sarah. While I developed my profession in software development, she worked as a marketing executive. Before everything fell apart last month, I believed our marriage was going well. We have two children, Mike, 17, a high school junior, and Jenny, 20, a psychology major in her second year of college. Sarah joined a new gym approximately 4 months ago, and that's when the issues started. She said she wanted to lose weight before her 46th birthday. She also said she'd rather go alone to focus on herself, but I agreed with her choice and even offered to accompany her. I was initially pleased to see her taking care of herself. She began going to the gym more frequently, sometimes twice a day. I didn't question it because she seemed happier and more energetic. However, things started to change. She altered her haircut, bought brand new clothes, and spent all of her time on her phone. Whenever I entered the room, she would immediately switch apps or turn off her phone screen. She also mentioned that her team at work had taken on a large project for a new customer, which required her to work late. She often wouldn't return home until 9 or 10 p.m. I didn't think much of it. I had total faith in her. I even took care of the kids' needs so she could concentrate on her work and made sure dinner was ready for her when she got home. But then things became more distant. We had less sex. She always had an excuse. She was exhausted, had a headache, or had to get up early. For nearly 3 months, we went from being intimate 2 or 3 times a week to none at all. I assumed it was due to stress at work, so I didn't bring it up again. 3 weeks ago, on a Friday night, she texted me saying she needed to talk to me about something important. I assumed it was about our upcoming summer vacation plans or that she had received a promotion she had been hoping for. The house was empty because Mike was at football practice and Jenny was at the university library. But when Sarah got home, she wasn't alone. She was with a tall, strong man who looked to be in his late 30s. His name was Derek, 39. In the living room, the same place where we had celebrated our 20th anniversary just 2 years prior, Sarah told us that she was 3 months pregnant and that Derek was the father. She explained that they had developed a strong connection after meeting at the gym 8 months ago. She admitted that, although she hadn't been happy in our marriage for years, she had never had the courage to speak up. She claimed that I didn't understand her emotional needs because I was too focused on my work. Derek sat there with a smug expression, occasionally massaging Sarah's back as though to comfort her. Sarah went on to say that they intended to start a new life together. She had spent late nights with him, not at work as I had assumed. They had been meeting at the gym and going to his apartment. It wasn't just for working out. I felt like I was in a nightmare. This woman, who had shed happy tears at Jenny's high school graduation and helped me recover from pneumonia 3 years ago, was now sitting in our house, telling me she was expecting a child with another man. I told them both to leave immediately. Things quickly escalated. Derek stood up and began shouting that since Sarah owned half the house, I couldn't throw her out. According to him, I needed to man up and admit that Sarah had moved on to someone better. I remained calm and informed them they needed to leave my house immediately because I would be filing for divorce first thing Monday morning. Puffing up his chest like a fake macho man, Derek got in my face. He threatened to make things difficult for me if I didn't back off. His tone made me uneasy, so I began recording everything on my phone, partially concealing it behind a cushion on the couch. I repeated that they needed to leave. That's when Derek pulled a gun from his waistband, pointed it directly at my chest, and threatened me. He said that if I made the divorce process difficult for Sarah, he would make sure I felt bad. He also mentioned that he knew where I worked, where the kids went to school, and that accidents happen all the time. Sarah didn't say a word. She just sat there expressionless as Derek threatened her husband of 22 years. She didn't look shocked or afraid that he had a gun. She didn't try to stop him. I immediately called the police after they left, and I played the recording for them. Derek was arrested that night for threatening to commit a crime while brandishing a deadly weapon. Sarah was also taken into custody for her involvement in the threat. The next day, they were both released on bail. Everything fell apart when the kids came home and saw the police cruisers outside our house. When I told Jenny what had happened, she broke down crying. Mike secluded himself in his bedroom for 2 days after punching a hole in the wall. He only came out when I assured him we would get through this together. Both of our parents started calling nonstop. Sarah told her parents that I had been emotionally distant and that she had felt trapped in our marriage, so they believed I was being too harsh and should drop the charges because she was pregnant and stressed. In contrast, my parents were furious and insisted that I pursue every aspect of the divorce. I filed for divorce the following morning. According to my attorney, the recording would be very helpful in the divorce and criminal case. Since then, Sarah has been calling and texting me nonstop, accusing Derek of manipulating her and claiming she made a terrible mistake. She says she didn't know he was armed, but the footage shows otherwise. She didn't seem startled or scared when he pulled the gun. I've instructed her to contact us only through our attorneys and blocked her number. The kids won't talk to her. Jenny says she can never forgive her mother for ruining our family. Mike has failed 2 classes, and his football coach reported that he has been fighting during practice. We lost 22 years of marriage because she couldn't stay faithful. I looked at our wedding pictures last night. We were so happy and youthful. Now I'm preparing to go to court against her for the charges. Update: it's been a month since I last updated, and I feel like I've experienced more in these few weeks than I could have ever imagined. Everything has taken unexpected and, honestly, shocking turns since the divorce proceedings began. I'm going to try my best to outline what has transpired, though it feels like I'm living in a reality I don't quite recognize anymore. After my last post, I thought I had seen the worst of it. I had been dealing with the emotional devastation of betrayal and the police investigation that followed Derek's threat. I was preparing myself for a drawn-out divorce process and hoping that, somehow, the kids and I could rebuild our lives. But the universe had other plans, and things took a dramatic turn when Sarah and Derek's deceitful scheme was finally exposed in a way that I never saw coming. It all started in the courtroom. I had been dreading it, but I thought I had prepared myself for the confrontation. On the day of the hearing for the gun threat case, my lawyer and I arrived at the courthouse early. I wanted to be sure I was ready for whatever came my way. The tension in the air was palpable. They were together, both dressed like they were attending church, trying to present themselves as innocent and composed. Sarah kept trying to get my attention, but I was too focused on my phone trying to stay calm and collected. Their attorney, a slick man in a fancy suit, began speaking, and I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He was attempting to portray me as an angry, domineering husband who had been threatening Sarah for years. He painted me as someone who was willing to bankrupt and ruin Sarah's life without any remorse. He claimed that Derek had only pulled the gun because he was worried about Sarah's safety, and that my actions had pushed her into his arms. As their attorney rambled on, I was filled with a growing sense of disbelief. I kept thinking to myself, how can they possibly twist the truth like this? But when my lawyer played the recording of Derek's threats, everything changed. The room fell silent as everyone listened. You could hear Derek's voice clearly, threatening me with violence, mentioning where my children went to school, and even talking about accidents that could happen to me. What shocked me most, though, was Sarah's complete silence throughout the entire exchange. She didn't say a word. No expression of fear, no attempt to intervene. Her face remained blank, and that is when the truth hit me harder than anything else. The faces of Sarah and Derek turned pale as the realization sank in. The judge was visibly irate. She wasn't having any of it. She scheduled the trial for next month, and to my relief, both Derek and Sarah were ordered to stay at least 500 feet away from me, my home, and my place of work. It felt like a small victory, but I knew this was only the beginning. Just when I thought the worst was over, something happened that I could never have anticipated. The very next morning I was woken up to a knock at the door. I was groggy, disoriented, but when I opened it, I was met by a woman in her mid-30s holding a large folder. She introduced herself as Amy, Derek's wife. I was stunned. I had no idea Derek was married, and I couldn't comprehend what was happening. Amy explained that she had seen the news about Derek's arrest and had been doing her own digging. What she uncovered was far more disturbing than I could have imagined. Amy told me that Derek had done this before. 2 years ago, he had gotten a woman pregnant, then disappeared when she was 7 months along. The mother was forced to return to her parents' house and raise the child on her own. But it didn't end there. Amy presented me with text messages between Derek and Sarah dating back months before they had even told me about the pregnancy. The texts were chilling. They weren't just planning an affair, they were planning to destroy my life. They were conspiring to provoke me into acting out. One of the messages Derek sent to Sarah was particularly damning. "I'll contribute when we inform him. I'll give him a small scare. If he becomes hostile, you will receive everything, and he'll know not to fight the divorce." Sarah's reply was chilling as well. "Great plan, sweetie. He'll most likely cry because he's such a coward." It was clear now that this wasn't just a betrayal, it was a calculated, cold-hearted plot. I immediately sent all of this evidence to the district attorney's office and my attorney. The DA is now considering adding conspiracy charges to the already existing threats charge. Sarah, of course, tried to call me nonstop after she learned what had happened. She was crying, claiming that she had been manipulated by Derek, that she had no idea he was married, and that she had made a terrible mistake. But the text messages didn't lie. She was fully aware of who Derek was, of his family, and of his manipulative behavior. She had even mocked Derek's wife Amy, calling her too stupid to notice the affair. The situation only became more complicated when Jenny, looking for some old family photos in Sarah's drawer, stumbled upon a second phone. This phone contained communications between Sarah and Derek dating back over a year. It was clear now that they had been planning this for months. They had waited until Sarah's pregnancy was visible to tell me, knowing that the involvement of a baby would make it harder for me to fight back. They thought I would back down, thinking of the child's future, but they didn't count on my resolve. The fallout from all of this has been devastating, particularly for our children. Mike, who has always been a strong, confident kid, is now barely leaving his room. His football coach called to report that he has been watching practices from the stands, disengaged and withdrawn. He's failing 3 classes. Jenny, on the other hand, has been inconsolable. She texted Sarah telling her she was dead to her and that she would never want to see her again. Sarah responded with something cold: "You'll understand when you're older and fall in love." Jenny's pain is evident, and she refuses to have anything to do with her mother. I couldn't believe what I was hearing when I read the response. It felt like a slap in the face. And yet, as much as my heart breaks for Jenny and Mike, I can't help but feel a strange sense of relief. For the first time in weeks, I'm starting to feel like I'm in control again. I've sent copies of the text messages to Sarah's parents, hoping they would finally see what kind of person their daughter has become. They were appalled by what they read. Her father, who had been defending her behavior up until that point, actually broke down in tears when he read the messages. He said he never raised her to be like this, and that he had no idea she was capable of something so cruel. They've stopped answering her calls now, and I think, for the first time, they're realizing the truth. According to my attorney, Sarah won't receive anything in the divorce because of the calculated and manipulative nature of her actions. She will lose the property division and likely face serious repercussions for her involvement in the conspiracy. But honestly, I don't care about the money anymore. I don't want anything from this woman. She's not the person I thought I married. The woman who sat in our home and ate meals with our family for years, who helped me through my darkest times, is now a stranger to me. I find myself asking how I could have missed all of this. How could I have been so blind? The truth is I had total faith in Sarah. I never once questioned her. I never thought to check her phone or pry into her life. But now I realize she took that trust and used it against me. She used my love and loyalty as a weapon to hurt me and tear apart our family. The hardest part of all of this is knowing that I was the fool who trusted her. I never imagined that after 22 years of marriage, this is how it would end. Now, I'm left to pick up the pieces of my life. I'm fighting for my children, for our future, and for the justice we deserve. I don't know what the future holds, but I know one thing for certain: I will never let anyone treat me this way again. The road ahead will be difficult, but at least I'm no longer living in a lie. I can see the truth now, and I will fight for my family, no matter what it takes. Update 2. It's been another month since I last wrote, and things have continued to spiral in ways I could never have predicted. To be honest, I didn't think life could throw more at me after everything that's happened. But here we are. I'm still grappling with the fallout of everything, trying to find some semblance of normalcy, but it feels like every time I take one step forward, I'm pulled 2 steps back. The divorce proceedings are dragging on longer than I'd hoped. Honestly, part of me thought once I had the evidence and the restraining order, things would move faster. But the reality of legal battles and family dynamics has proven far more complex than I ever imagined. The process is exhausting both mentally and emotionally. I find myself waking up in the middle of the night, my mind racing with everything that's happened and all the questions that have yet to be answered. And then, during the day, it feels like I'm living in some kind of surreal alternate reality. I'm constantly trying to pick up the pieces and protect my children, but every step forward feels like I'm being dragged into more chaos. One of the hardest parts of all of this is the continued impact it's having on our kids. Jenny is still so angry with Sarah, and I don't blame her. I don't think any child should ever have to go through what she has. She keeps saying she doesn't want anything to do with her mother, and at first I thought that was just a phase, an emotional response. But now I think it's deeper than that. Jenny doesn't just feel betrayed. She feels abandoned by the person she trusted most. The woman who should have been her rock, the person she could go to for guidance, love, and support, has turned out to be someone completely unrecognizable. A few weeks ago, I took Jenny to dinner, just the two of us. We hadn't had a one-on-one conversation in a while, and I thought maybe we could talk things through. But instead it was her who started asking the hard questions. "Dad," she said, her voice trembling a little, "how could you not see this coming? How did you not know?" I could tell she wasn't just angry with Sarah. She was angry with me too. She felt like I had failed her, like I had let her down by not seeing the signs of what was happening between Sarah and Derek. It was gut-wrenching. "I trusted her, Jen," was all I could say. "I never thought she could do this to us, to you." And that's the truth. I did trust her. I thought, after 22 years of marriage, that there was nothing we couldn't get through. But now I look back and see how blind I was to the cracks in our relationship, how much she had been pulling away from me without me even realizing it. Jenny shook her head. "But you were always there for her. You did everything you could, and she just—" I didn't know how to answer. As much as I wanted to say, "Yes, one day you'll understand," I couldn't bring myself to lie to her. I don't even know if I'll ever forgive Sarah. I don't know if that's even possible anymore. How do you forgive someone who has shattered everything you've built together? How do you come to terms with the fact that the person you thought you knew was capable of such betrayal? It's a question I haven't found an answer to. Mike, on the other hand, has taken the separation in a different way. He's been quieter, more withdrawn. The football coach called me last week, and I could hear the concern in his voice. Mike's not showing up to practice. He's not interacting with the other players, and I knew things were bad, but hearing it from someone else really drove it home. Mike's always been the strong, silent type. After the incident with Derek and the police, when Mike saw the police cars outside the house, he's been shutting himself off more and more. He doesn't want to talk to anyone about it. A few days ago I went into his room to check on him, and it was like walking into a wall of emotion. His walls were plastered with football posters and old childhood memories, but everything seemed so distant now. He was sitting at his desk, headphones on, just staring at his computer screen. I stood there for a while, unsure of what to say. Then, without taking his eyes off the screen, he said, "I hate him, Dad. I hate him for what he did to you, to Mom." I wasn't sure if he was talking about Derek or Sarah, but it didn't matter. It was the anger, the confusion, that I felt too. I sat on the bed beside him, unsure of what to say, and we just sat there in silence. It's hard to watch my children go through this. They're both dealing with so much hurt, and I can't help them in the way I want to. All I can do is be there for them and try to help them find their way back from this. I've tried to be strong for them, but I've realized that sometimes strength isn't about holding everything together. Sometimes it's about showing them it's okay to fall apart. Meanwhile, Sarah hasn't made things any easier. She's been trying to contact me non-stop, calls, texts, emails, but I've blocked her on everything. After the evidence about her scheme with Derek came to light, I didn't want to hear her excuses. She's been calling and crying, claiming that she was manipulated by Derek, that she made a terrible mistake, that she never meant to hurt me. But I'm done listening to her. I've seen enough. The woman I married is gone, and in her place is someone unrecognizable, someone who is willing to lie, manipulate, and betray the very people who loved her. One of the most surreal moments of this entire process came last week, when Sarah's parents showed up at my door. At first, I didn't want to deal with them. They had been calling me nonstop, but when I opened the door and saw them standing there, their faces were different. Her father, who had defended her throughout this entire ordeal, was no longer the same man I remembered. He looked like someone who had just realized the truth and was struggling to come to terms with it. "I don't know what to say to you," he said, his voice shaking. "I raised my daughter better than this, I didn't know." It was hard for me to look at him. I wanted to feel angry, to tell him that he had enabled Sarah, that he should have seen the warning signs too. But in that moment, all I could think about was how much pain all of this has caused, not just me and my children, but everyone who was affected by Sarah's actions. Her parents included. Her mother, too, had tears in her eyes as she apologized for Sarah's behavior. "She's our daughter," her mother said. "We never thought she could do something like this." It's strange, but for a moment I felt bad for them. They had spent so many years believing in their daughter, and now everything was crumbling around them. They didn't have the answers, and they didn't have any control over what was happening. We all had been fooled by the same person. But despite their apologies, I know what has to be done. The damage has already been done, and there's no going back. I can't erase the past, and I certainly can't pretend that everything is going to be okay just because they showed up and said they were sorry. What's done is done. The trial is still scheduled for next month. I'm preparing for whatever comes next, but I'm doing it with a sense of clarity now. I know I can't change what's happened, but I can control how I move forward. I won't let Sarah or Derek destroy the life I've built, and I won't let them take my children's future. The hardest thing right now is accepting the truth about Sarah. She's not the person I thought she was, and that's a difficult pill to swallow. But I'm learning day by day how to rebuild. It's going to take time, but I have to believe that